The infinite silence of room 88.
Usually when we talk about like a missing persons case, the focus is almost entirely on the human-shaped void that gets left behind.
Right.
Like we picture the empty chair at the dinner table or, the car just sort of left idling in the driveway.
Exactly.
We tend to focus on the space that the person used to occupy.
Because, I mean, human beings vanish. We wander off, we run away, or, we fall victim to foul play. But physical spaces, by their very nature, they stay put.
Yeah.
They're sort of the anchors of our reality.
Right. We expect the physical world to be reliable.
Hmm.
But so what happens when you're not just looking for a missing person, but like an actual missing place?
Right.
If you're listening to this, I kind of want you to picture something.
Mm.
Imagine you're driving down this really dry, sun-bleached stretch of highway right in the middle of nowhere.
Just totally desolate.
Yeah, exactly. And you pull over at these crumbling ruins of an old roadside stop. It was known as the Whispering Pines Motel. And you walk up to the cracked foundation, you look down and you see this actual physical stutter in the concrete, like a bizarre gap where reality just seems to have, I don't know, stalled out.
It really challenges our most basic, hardwired assumption of object permanence. I mean, if you build a structure out of wood and concrete, it doesn't just cease to be.
Right.
Like the idea that a chunk of physical geography could simply be excised from the universe is just profoundly unsettling.
It really is. You're listening to A Deep Dive, and today we're cracking open this chilling architectural record known as The Legend of Room 88.
It's a wild one.
It is. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the anatomy of a physical and, well, a psychological cover-up. We are going to figure out how a room is literally and administratively erased from reality. And we're going to explore what happens when the secrets that are buried inside a space like that absolutely refuse to stay quiet.
And, the documentation surrounding the Whispering Pines Motel is really fascinating, precisely because it isn't presented as just some campfire ghost story.
Right.
It's a study of architectural erasure. Like, we are looking at a deliberate attempt to obliterate a room so thoroughly that it's as if a physical coordinate on the map was just swallowed whole.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really ground this mystery in reality, we have to start with the tangible evidence.
The paperwork.
Exactly, the paperwork. Because if you actually dig into the county records and pull the official architectural blueprints that were filed for this motel in 1989, everything looks perfectly standard.
Yeah, at first glance.
Right. You trace your finger down the hallway layout and you see room 87, and then sharing a wall right next door to it is room 89.
And that alone, I mean, that is the first major red flag.
Oh, totally.
Because anyone who has ever stayed in our hotel knows how numbering conventions work, right?
Yeah.
It's either odd numbers on one side and evens on the other, or it's a continuous sequential loop.
87, 88, 89.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But skipping from 87 to 89 on a single shared wall, well, it implies a missing tooth in the smile of this building.
That's a creepy way to put it, but yeah.
And if you dig just a little bit deeper, like past those sanitized 1989 records, and you uncover the original, dust-covered drafts from the winter of 1988, the floor plan changes.
Yeah.
Nestled perfectly between 87 and 89 is room 88.
So we have this undeniable documented proof that this room was actually built. Like, it existed.
It was physically there.
Right. But taking a room off a blueprint isn't like, I don't know, it's not like deleting a corrupted file on your computer.
No.
Where you just sort of drag it to the trash can and maybe you leave a phantom shortcut on your desktop that points to nowhere.
Right.
This is a physical void in the real world. I mean, it's the chunk of space that used to hold air and light and people, and it's just removed from the grid. How does a motel owner even accomplish that?
Well, it requires a just staggering amount of deliberate, calculated effort. I mean, think about the mechanics of an administrative conspiracy of this scale.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
If a hotel experiences a tragedy, say a fatal accident or a violent crime in a specific room, the standard industry procedure is pretty passive. You lock the door. You take the room out of the booking system for a few months.
You let the memory fade.
Exactly.
You just hang a permanent out-of-order sign on the doorknob and kind of look the other way.
Right. But erasing a room from county blueprints is a different beast entirely.
Yeah.
It means hiring an architect or some draftsperson to falsify new structural plans.
Oh, wow.
And then submitting those fraudulent plans to county clerks, paying filing fees, maybe even bribing building inspectors to sign off on a floor plan that contradicts the actual physical foundation of the building.
That is so much effort.
It really is. It's systematic, quiet erasure. The original record actually notes that there is a, quote, peculiar kind of violence in being forgotten.
Oh man, that line hits so hard.
Yeah.
Because forgetting, in this case, it isn't just a passive failure of memory. It's like an active, violent suppression of reality.
When you just lock a door, you are at least acknowledging that the room exists. You are respecting the physical boundaries of the space.
Sure, sure.
But when you alter the foundational documents of a building to pretend a room never existed at all, you're committing a form of architectural violence. You are basically forcing the world to lie.
And all of this extreme, kind of frantic, bureaucratic cover-up stems from this single event.
Yeah.
A cold November night in 1988. A traveler pulled off the highway, walked into the lobby of the Whispering Pines Motel, paid for their stay in cash, checked into room 88, and then just vanished.
Yeah.
The record states they simply ceased to be.
Which brings us to the really terrifying question of causality here.
Right.
If this room was so thoroughly erased from public record that it constituted, architectural violence, we have to ask, what on earth did the local police find inside that room that terrified the owners enough to execute that kind of cover-up?
Exactly. Like, put yourself in the shoes of that first young detective arriving on the scene at the motel.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Right. A guest has completely disappeared without a trace. So you're probably bracing yourself for this gruesome crime scene. You've got your hand on your holster.
Your adrenaline is pumping.
Exactly. You push open the door to room 88, and you're expecting a bloodbath or, shattered windows, overturned furniture, but instead you walk into a perfectly sterile, chilling preservation of normalcy.
And the visual details that the police recorded are deeply unsettling precisely because of their domestic tranquility.
It's so weird.
It is. The bed was meticulously made.
Yeah.
There was a glass of water sitting totally calmly on the nightstand, exactly half empty.
Yeah.
And outside, the guest's car was parked in its designated spot, but the engine block was completely cold.
So zero signs of a struggle, no forced entry, no scuff marks on the linoleum, just nothing.
Nothing at all.
It's like the occupant was plucked out of the room by this invisible claw. But while the eyes of the police officers were telling them that everything was fine, their primitive survival instincts were screaming.
Right, because of the smell.
Right. The air inside the room was suffocatingly heavy, and it smelled very distinctly of stagnant water and old copper.
And let's break down the mechanics of those olfactory anomalies for a second, because scents are never accidental in a confined space.
Definitely not.
Stagnant water implies an ecosystem that is completely stalled out. It's the smell of something decaying in a closed loop, without any fresh current or oxygen.
Yeah.
And old copper, well, that is the unmistakable chemical signature of oxidized blood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Our brains are biologically hardwired to recognize the smell of iron and copper as a predator or prey threat.
That makes so much sense.
So the visual piece of the room, the neatly tucked bed sheets, it's in direct, horrifying conflict with the visceral atmosphere of death.
And that invisible terror is finally given a voice when the detective turns to leave the room. He pushes the heavy, solid wood door shut.
Right.
And there, on the back of the door, scratched deep into the paint, is this single frantic sentence. It says, "The reflections are no longer ours. They watch from the dark."
The record actually describes those scratches as an epitaph of psychological unraveling.
Wow.
And the most crucial piece of evidence here is the forensic nature of the scratching itself.
Because of how it was made, right?
Exactly. This warning wasn't neatly carved with a pocket knife or a key. It was gouged into the wood by desperate, splintered fingernails.
Oh my God.
A human being literally destroyed their own hands to leave that message.
But wait, I have to push back on the timeline of this unraveling here, because this is where the logic of the physical space sort of breaks my brain.
I get what you mean.
Well, if there was absolutely no sign of a physical struggle, and the bed was perfectly neatly made, how does that sequence of events play out?
Right.
Like, does a person calmly tuck in their bed sheets, take a measured sip of water, place the glass down, and then immediately turn around and claw at a solid wooden door like a cornered animal until their fingers bleed?
That is the glaring discrepancy, and it forces us to rethink the fundamental nature of the threat. In a standard crime scene, evidence of a struggle implies an external intruder. A broken window, a kicked-in door, some sort of chaotic fight.
Right, someone coming in.
But the pristine state of room 88, combined with the desperate clawing at the interior of the door, It completely inverts that dynamic. The threat didn't come through the door.
Because the door was their exit. They were trying to claw their way out of the room.
The evidence strongly suggests the threat materialized from within the room itself.
Oh, man.
Or, given the cryptic nature of the message, from another dimension entirely.
Right.
The traveler wasn't fighting a physical intruder. They were fighting a sudden, catastrophic realization.
The reflections.
Right. The specific phrasing, "the reflections are no longer ours," points to a fundamental breakdown of reality. It's an internal, psychological, and supernatural collapse that leaves the physical furniture completely undisturbed, but utterly obliterates the occupant.
That is deeply terrifying.
It really is.
Because it implies that whatever cornered them didn't need to, pick a lock to get inside. It was already in there with them.
Yes.
And this completely reframes the motel management's extreme reaction. Like, they didn't just have a missing persons case. They had an impossible, anomalous trap on their property.
And the management's response serves as this dark masterclass in the absolute futility of suppressing trauma.
Yeah.
I mean, their highway business was already suffering. A scandal involving a macabre, inexplicable disappearance would just bankrupt them overnight.
Oh, for sure.
So rather than solving the mystery or bringing in specialized help, they opted for a brutal remedy.
They decided to literally bury it.
Yeah.
Like, over a single weekend, they brought in cash-paid day laborers. And they didn't just change the locks.
No, much more than that.
They laid brick and mortar right over the entryway. They sealed room 88 behind a thick, heavy, blank wall of concrete and plaster, completely smoothing it over so the hallway just looked like this continuous wall between rooms 87 and 89.
It is the ultimate architectural expression of out of sight, out of mind.
Truly.
They genuinely believed that by creating a dense physical barrier, they could contain an anomaly that had already proven it didn't play by the rules of physics.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Yep.
Because the massive irony here is that by trying to save their business and hide this void, they achieved the exact opposite.
They really did.
By bricking up the room, they essentially built a giant concrete megaphone for a ghost.
Because the physical barrier acted as an acoustic amplifier.
Right.
Think about the properties of dense materials like masonry and concrete. They don't absorb low-frequency energy well at all.
No, they carry it.
They transmit it.
Yeah.
So the trauma of whatever occurred in that room could not be starved of oxygen. It just began to leak through the mortar.
And guests staying in the adjacent rooms, 87 and 89, they started complaining almost immediately. And it started with this tactile sensation, a deeply unnatural coldness just seeping right through the shared walls. The record describes it as a chill that no space heater or blanket could dispel.
Because it wasn't a meteorological cold, it was an energetic void.
Wow.
And then the auditory haunting commenced. And the sensory details recorded here are incredibly precise, which really shifts this from a standard ghost story to something much more structured and malicious.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't just random sounds.
Exactly. This wasn't the random creaking of settling pipes. It happened every single night with mechanical precision at exactly 3:33 a.m.
3:33 in the morning. A guest is lying in bed in the dark, and suddenly the concrete wall beside them comes alive.
Yeah.
It starts with rhythmic scratching, followed by 3 precise, deliberate knocks from the other side of the brickwork.
From the side where there isn't supposed to be anything.
Right. The side where, according to the official floor plan they saw in the lobby, nothing exists. But wait, if this isn't random noise, why 3 knocks? Like, that implies structure.
It implies high-level intelligence and intentionality.
Okay.
3 knocks is a universal pattern of communication. It requires pausing, counting, and executing.
Right.
It is a deliberate signal being broadcast from a space that has been declared administratively dead.
And it gets even more invasive than that. Guests didn't just hear knocks on the brick.
No, they heard voices.
They reported hearing desperate, frantic whispers. But these voices weren't coming through the air vents or something normal like that.
No.
They were filtering directly through the power outlets next to the beds. The record says the whispers were, quote, coiled in fear, pleading for someone to break the barrier.
Consider the terrifying logic of that mechanism for a second.
So creepy.
Electricity relies on conductive pathways. It requires a closed circuit, a continuous loop to travel.
Okay.
The entity trapped in room 88 wasn't just haunting the physical plaster. It was hijacking the motel's own energetic nervous system.
Oh, wow.
It was using the copper wiring within the walls, acting as a current itself, to broadcast its frequency directly to the very outlets that were inches away from the sleeping guests' heads.
It is such poetic justice for the motel management, honestly.
It really is.
By trying to avoid a minor scandal, they weaponized the very walls they used to entomb the secret.
Yep.
They created an active, aggressive haunting that systematically terrified every subsequent guest, essentially guaranteeing their own financial ruin.
Which is exactly what happened. The Whispering Pines Motel eventually crumbled into total disrepair.
Yeah, completely abandoned.
The business folded, the roof caved in, but the legend of Room 88 lingered on that highway like an indelible stain.
It just wouldn't go away.
No. And the architectural record actually offers a theoretical framework for why this specific room became such a profound epicenter for this anomaly.
I really want to get into this.
It hinges on the mathematical and philosophical nature of the room's number itself.
Let's dive into that, because the numerology here isn't just, superstitious fluff. It structurally explains what happened to the guest.
It really does.
So the number 8 has long been recognized as the symbol for infinity. A continuous, unbroken loop with no beginning and no end.
Right. But Room 88 is two 8s standing side by side.
Yeah.
In esoteric geometry, this is referred to as a double infinity. It doesn't just mean forever. It represents an inescapable parasitic trap where the end of one cycle is intrinsically bound to the birth of another.
Wow.
It's a closed system of perpetual recurrence.
So when you say a closed system of perpetual recurrence, do you mean that this traveler is just reliving the exact 5 minutes of their disappearance on a loop, like a skipped record, forever?
That is the horrific implication, yes. The record theorizes that the guest didn't physically escape the room, nor did they simply die in a traditional sense.
Okay.
They slipped into that infinite loop. They became caught in the shadow world between the mirror and the glass.
Let's visualize that number 88 for a second. If you write out two 8s side by side, they visually look like a heavy pair of iron handcuffs, like you are locked in.
Right.
Or, keeping in mind the warning scratched on the door about reflections, imagine two mirrors placed directly facing one another.
The infinity mirror effect.
Exactly. They reflect the same image back and forth, multiplying it, getting smaller and smaller, tunneling endlessly into the dark.
And that geometric visualization perfectly explains the acoustic phenomena we discussed earlier.
Oh, you're right.
Think back to the sounds the guests heard through the masonry. It was never a chaotic jumble of screams. It was rhythmic scratching. 3 knocks at exactly 3:33 a.m. every single night.
The haunting itself is a loop.
Exactly. It is the acoustic manifestation of a cycle repeating itself endlessly.
Oh, man.
The traveler is experiencing that singular moment of absolute terror the moment they realized the walls were closing in, the moment they tried to claw through the door over and over again, broadcasting the audio of their eternal trap into our reality.
The scratching and the knocking, it's just the needle skipping on the vinyl record of whatever dimension they are trapped in.
Beautifully put.
And the scratched warning itself, the reflections are no longer ours, they watch from the dark. That tells us the exact mechanism of the trap.
Yes.
It tells us what the traveler realized right before they were pulled into that loop. They looked into the bathroom mirror or the glass of the window and realized the reflection looking back at them was no longer imitating their movements.
It had its own agency.
It had its own agency. That is just, I can't even imagine.
It shatters the fundamental contract we have with physical reality.
It really does.
We implicitly trust that a reflection is a passive, obedient mimic of light.
Right. It just does what we do.
Exactly. When a reflection stops mimicking and starts watching you, the boundary between the physical world and the shadow world has completely collapsed.
So, what does this all mean? If we take a step back and look at the anatomy of this entire cover-up, the falsified blueprints, the pristine bed, the splintered fingernails, the frantic whispers through the copper wiring. What is the core insight we walk away with?
Well,
Why do human beings have this instinct to just build walls over the things that terrify us?
it's an incredibly pervasive psychological defense mechanism
Mm.
on both an individual and an institutional level.
How so?
When we are confronted with something fundamentally incompatible with our worldview, something that threatens our safety, our ego, or in this case, a literal business model,
Mm.
our instinct is rarely to dismantle it and understand it.
We don't want to look at it closely.
No, our instinct is to compartmentalize it.
Yeah.
We try to legislate, bureaucratize, or literally build our way out of confronting the unknown.
Yeah.
We falsify the 1989 blueprints of our own lives to pretend the trauma never existed.
But this architectural record leaves us with a quiet, terrifying certainty. We can build all the walls we want, but some spaces refuse to be silenced. The suppressed secret always finds a way to leak through the mortar. If you try to bury it, it just uses the pressure to amplify its voice.
And that amplification leads us to one final, deeply unsettling extrapolation based on the clues left at the scene.
Oh boy. Okay, I'm bracing myself.
Look closely at the specific grammar of the scratched warning. It didn't just say, my reflection is alive.
Right.
It said, the reflections are no longer ours. They watch from the dark. The prevailing theory is that the traveler was ultimately pulled into that infinite double loop.
Dragged into the shadow world behind the glass.
Exactly.
Leaving the physical room completely undisturbed.
But consider the physics of a closed system and the geometry of a double infinity.
Okay.
It requires an exchange of energy. If the space between the reflection and the reality opened up wide enough and for long enough to drag an entire human being out of our world, what exactly came out of the mirror to take their place?
Oh my gosh.
If the entity was watching from the dark, and a vacuum was created by the traveler's disappearance, it stands to reason that the entity didn't stay in the dark.
They swapped places.
They swapped places. And as you drive down that dry, sun-bleached stretch of highway today, looking at the stutter in the concrete where Room 88 used to stand,
Yeah.
it leaves you wondering where that reflection is walking right now.
And that is a thought I am going to leave you to mull over the next time you look in a mirror. Until next time.